That's Nick.
That's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Marry Me, the third film directed by Kat Coiro, which is being released courtesy of Universal, February 11th, 2022.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We're not together because you're in Berlin.
I am. It is about 1:15 a.m. Mm-hmm.
So you're tired. It's been a long day.
It has, yes.
We'll probably make a video about you in Berlin, maybe in like 3 or 4 days, to get a mid-festival recap. But anyway, we're talking about this Jennifer Lopez movie. Who directed it?
Kat Coiro.
The director's name is Kat?
Yeah.
Because the main character's name is Kat.
Kat Valdez, yeah.
Wow, that's interesting.
How fortuitous, yes.
Has this person directed other things?
Yeah, as I said, it's her fourth feature. She's done a lot of television.
Okay.
It's been almost a decade since she's directed a feature. I haven't seen anything previous. There's a Kate Bosworth title I'm not remembering, plus something called A Case of You, starring Justin Long.
Okay, the basic story of this movie is Jennifer Lopez plays like a Jennifer Lopez type character. She's a pop star, and she's engaged to Maluma, who's also like a very popular pop star. So they're like this power couple, and we meet them on the eve of their marriage, which they're going to do like live in concert in conjunction with this song they've recorded together called Marry Me. And literally right before this lady hops up on the stage to get married, everyone is in like a tizzy because a TMZ type website has dropped video footage of Maluma having an affair with Jennifer Lopez's assistant.
Well, sucking face. That's
sucking face. Sure. I don't agree that it's that serious, but it is what it is. So instead of like taking time to think about it or, you know, canceling this thing and just moving on with the concert, this lady gets on stage and gives some weird speech about love and then says she'll marry a man in the audience who's holding a sign saying, "Marry me."
Well, she says, I believe it's a refrain. If you want something different, you got to do something different. So
she says a lot of like things that seem very generic that make no sense for why she's doing what she's about to do. So the man holding the sign is Owen Wilson. And he's only there because his friend / colleague, Sarah Silverman, is a huge Jennifer Lopez fan. And she's also a lesbian. So she was going to hold the "Marry Me" sign.
A huge Kat Valdez fan.
So he says yes. He gets up on stage. Someone like a backup dancer, officiates this marriage, which is not official. He says, he doesn't even say "I do." He says like "sure" or something like that. And then this like media storm happens and J-Lo says, well, I have to go through with this or people will think I'm crazy. Okay. So they're together for like 6 weeks.
Sure.
Something like that. And during that time, they're getting to know each other. It's going very well. But she ends up getting nominated for what we're told seems like a Grammy, which is the first time she's been nominated for the song she recorded with Maluma.
Nominated for anything.
For anything, which is hard to believe. But she reunites with Maluma, but says like, it's just for work, but kind of puts Owen Wilson on the back burner. But then she's doing an interview with Maluma on the Jimmy Fallon whatever show. And she has this realization that this is not the kind of love she wants. And she goes back to Owen Wilson, the end. It's very predictable, very basic.
I guess she never knew there was a love like this before. I don't know.
Oh, I don't think Faith Evans deserves to be associated with this movie.
Certainly does not. Sorry to this woman.
Do you want to go to your notes or should I?
You know what, you usually like to start with yours, so you know.
Okay, I thought Owen Wilson looked like Ellen DeGeneres.
He does.
That blonde hair and the way it's styled, it's so overly done. And then he is wearing all of the makeup. There's a scene in particular when they're first in bed
Yes, his character also makes a comment about having to wear makeup for some social media event, and it's like, well, you okay, but yes, I've often thought that about Owen Wilson. I would love to see him in a new hairdo. Uh, if he's not reminding me of Ellen DeGeneres, it's one of those puppets that shows up on the Mr. Rogers show. You know what I'm
Oh,
talking-
yes. I don't know
Not
why.
to,
I
not
took
to,
a COVID test this morning. I don't have it. But
not to
my
be
next
mean, but
note,
they do make comments about his looks at first quite a bit, like, oh, you picked him, okay. And yeah, it's like this beautiful woman chose, of all people, this person, but whatever.
these people are too old to be behaving this way. I really felt like J-Lo, Owen Wilson, Sarah Silverman. I feel like this Kat Valdez or whatever character, she should have been like an Ariana Grande. It just doesn't make sense. And then like Sarah Silverman's acting like a 20-year-old.
They're all this film is heavily dependent upon the supporting players to kind of take up the slack. I found, and kind of provide that energy that the leads aren't allowed to, aren't supposed to. Also with Michelle Buteau and John Bradley as kind of J-Lo's two right-hand folks that are directing everything about her. Yeah, and then even Utkarsh Ambudkar at the end is the other math coach.
Oh, right.
Yeah, like all of these notable people, Hoda Kotb even trying
Michelle
to fill.
Buteau, who I like.
I like her, but I think we had talked about this film before, and she doesn't seem to match kind of this sweet saccharine tone of the film, because she's kind of a bitch.
Right.
And for no real reason except to maybe be saying what maybe they're trying to say what the audience is saying about the casting of Owen Wilson, like, why this man? But
she also doesn't match her employer. Like J-Lo's character is a very sweet lady, very reasonable.
she is, back in the early 2000s, a lot of J-Lo features, there were a lot of defenders of, well, a lot of these movies are dumb, but at least they're showing this woman working in a way that we don't see women working in roles they're professed to be in, like Maid Manhattan, for instance. And ironically, I find we don't really see much of her working per se. In like, yes, she's singing and performing, but we don't really see a lot of the behind the scenes work, like what she has to do, her beauty regimen, what she has to do to keep this incredible physique. We do see her doing this spot for a juicer that is really silly and referenced. I think is a way to do that, but to me that's really not enough to explain how she is the way that she is.
I agree. So I watched this film separately from you, and I watched it with a friend of ours, and he commented, would you rather have a cheating Maluma or a faithful Owen Wilson?
Well, Maluma, he's obviously very nice to look at, very talented singer, but that man might as well have been a hologram in this movie. There is no screen presence with Maluma. So that's the other thing, like that we aren't given any sense of something is really lost here in this moment.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah.
But I to my answer would be like, if I had to choose those two or be alone, I would be alone.
Yeah. J-Lo's character says in relation, they have a press conference, her and Owen Wilson, and of course the reporters are asking her, like, why would you do something like this? And she says, nothing else has worked, maybe this will. I don't think that's the approach one should have.
No, and it also goes back to, if you want something different, do something different, but in the bounds of common logical sense. Because the setup of this film is viciously stupid,
Yes.
but it also could have really leaned into that and made this a really weird, wonky kind of comedy. It could have been like a really great 1940s comedy that, like, these two people stuck, like, think well, this is the 30s, but bringing a baby or His Girl Friday, and these two people against all odds that are brought together and kind of the zany shenanigans that could possibly happen. Because this film really doesn't lean into the dysfunction of what this scenario would bring, as evidenced in when J-Lo first meets Owen Wilson's daughter, who's played by Chloe Coleman of what was that movie with Dave Bautista, My Spy?
Oh, that's right. Oh, there was a scene where the two of us both like spit out our wine, is when J-Lo shows up to Owen Wilson's job. Like, he's a school teacher, a math teacher, and his daughter Lou is in the classroom. And, you know, J-Lo and Owen are married. So then Lou is her stepdaughter. And she walks into the classroom and goes, "Is that Lou? Like, you've been married to him for weeks and you don't even realize what your stepdaughter looks like." I thought that was really funny. But I agree with you. Like, this could have been so much more interesting and it could have leaned into so many things. And the fact that it's based on a graphic novel is so strong.
By Bobby Crosby, which after seeing this train wreck of a film, I want to read that graphic novel, I feel. But the script was written by a trio of co-writers that have projects ranging from the Mindy Project, Mad TV, and Catwoman. So I guess this is what you get in the blender. I also thought a weird tangent with the daughter, whose name was Lou. She had stage fright in a math competition, and that is kind of her backstory.
That's my next note, is that they have this scene where they like are dancing to help her get over her anxiety.
They focused on something else.
Yeah.
But when it come down to the actual, whatever that math competition was called with the Pythons, P-I-thons, the other team is so mean. It's like, y'all a bunch of nerds. Like, I wasn't knowledgeable as a kid, and trust all those people, including myself, that were on there were traumatized children. And the last thing that those kids are that vicious and cruel to one another. It's so stupid.
Okay, so something else that I was having a difficult time balancing is J-Lo's character is supposed to be like J-Lo, like at that level, right? Like super pop star, very, very famous. But I didn't get a sense of like, because not every character seems to like react to her. So like when she goes to the school, it's like not all of the students know who she is. She shows up at like, Owen Wilson has to chaperone like the school dance and she shows up as his date. And it's like some of the adults really react to her. There's a gay character who's like also a teacher at the school, and he's very excited to see her. But then the students are just kind of like, some pretty lady just walked in, we don't care. But then we cut to another scene and they're like singing. She gets up on the stage at the semi-formal dance in front of all these teenagers who didn't really react to her when she walked into the joint. And then she just decides to get up on stage and start singing. No one asked her to. And then she says, "Oh, I recorded this song when I was you all's age for my first album." So we would presume this is like 30 plus years ago. So in the 90s. And then all of these kids are singing along. I thought that was so weird. Like, they don't react to her when she walks in like they think she's a big deal, but somehow they know her song from 30 years ago.
It's not weird. It's just dumb and it's poor writing. But
there are moments like that throughout the film where she's walking around and people don't really.
It's like, interesting, because J-Lo produced this film. Because I kept thinking, like, why can't somebody write this woman a good goddamn movie? And it's like, well, maybe she doesn't want that for herself. She wants this formula. I don't know, because there's really no excuse, because it's so interesting because you have this such a notable persona it's like if Liz Taylor played a character like this that had multiple marriages, and it's really a commentary upon her own experiences about being in the tabloids and about how fake romances are, Ben Affleck, blah, 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 everything we think we know about J-Lo because of, the headlines I feel like I have to read that I don't care about. But, everything you think you know about her, they could have played with that so brilliantly, and they just don't. And all the scenes where they try to establish some chemistry with Owen Wilson, and to me, it felt so awkward. Yeah. And they do this thing where they switch, they agree to switch. Like he says, you have to turn off your social media and do everything for yourself. And she's like, well, you have to get on social media, but we don't see him.
We don't.
They comment on, they comment on him like, oh, he's gotten so many followers, but we don't see him getting on social media because social media is boring. Like,
well, that being
so,
said, a feature used throughout the film is we see characters on Instagram Live a lot.
mhm.
And I thought that just seems so dated. Like in 5 years, in 2 years, by next year, like this movie is just going to seem so played out. I also wanted to mention J-Lo records a lot of original music for this film, none of which I thought was like anything to remember. I'm not.
The slow ballad was okay.
It's okay, but I just think like she put a lot of energy into this project because we see her do several performances. So like there was choreography, she looks fabulous, she's dancing very well, obviously. A lot of effort was put into the music and the performances. It just seems so odd that you know what this feels like to me? That damn movie called Aline, like the unauthorized autobiography of, or the biography of Celine Dion, where it's like a lot of care was put into the music and then the story is just cock-a-doodle. And I know that this is from source material, but like, what about this story resonated with her? Because I heard her give a couple interviews about this movie and how she really relates to this character. And part of me thinks, to answer your comment from before, I don't think J-Lo's ready to be seen in a more vulnerable light because she still looks amazing. So I don't think this lady wants to be on anyone's big screen looking crazy. So I think that maybe in 10 years, when we start to see the cracks, maybe she'll be a little more vulnerable, but I don't think she wants to be seen without full hair and makeup and snatched into some fabulous outfit. So because of that, she'll never be able to play a real character.
Right. It's almost, you need that moment because this is at that level of like mainstream sensibility where you need that moment of where you like Miranda Priestley, Meryl Streep in Devil Wears Prada, where you get that scene of her where she's, you know, completely vulnerable without makeup at home. And it's like, yeah, we never see her beyond the glitz and glamour, which is, I think, also why all of her scenes with Owen Wilson, where they're trying to build chemistry, just feel so fake. Like none of this feels like she's ever a real person, and it's just really grating. And then, you know, like you can see where the writers are trying to inject some kind of intelligence in this, with her wishing to, in her wedding vows, read Keats to her husband, or Owen Wilson, whose name is what, Charlie, you know, having a love for the music of Camelot. And it's like, you can see that, you know, those are kind of very specific references, you know, to well-read or well-watched people. And it's like, well, why couldn't they have the leverage to have made this really something meaningful?
We've spent a lot of time talking about a movie I don't think anyone thought would be good. So
I certainly didn't. I do want to mention that, you know, here's the progress we've come in 20 years. Sarah Silverman is once again shunted into the background, but she's playing a lesbian character that is allowed to be a lesbian. Because if you think back to 2001 in Heartbreakers, when her character was bisexual, they completely edited that out of the film, which you can see,
Lord.
which you can see in how she responds to the Jennifer Love Hewitt character. But no, very notably, they cut that out of that. So, you know, on the outskirts, we get the queerness. So I guess that's it.
I would not recommend this movie. I would give it 1.5 out of 5. I think if you're curious, you can watch the trailer, and it is exactly like the entire story is in the trailer. Like, she's gonna stay with this man, and we don't see their future. We just see that she's gonna give him a try. That's it. So it is exactly the trailer. There is nothing outside of that. There are no surprises. Like,
you know what? This felt very much like something like The Prince and the Showgirl with Laurence Olivier and Marilyn Monroe, where it's like but it's the opposite, where this prince gets this like beautiful woman. And it's like they talk about gender role reversals because J-Lo has kind of a speech about that. And it's like, that's the thing that is such the rub about this movie. This beautiful woman, this like celebrity royalty, reaches down into the masses and she picks out Owen Wilson. Laurence Olivier got Marilyn Monroe. I don't know. It's just it.
What would you give it?
Okay, so I think by the third act, it does generate some emotion, and there's sweetness to it. There is some sweetness to it. which is saving it from a 0.5. So I will give it a 1 out of 5.
Okay. Anything else?
What are you giving it?
I said 1.5 out of 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
So better. Okay. No, that's it.
Well, listen to our podcast. Bye.
Bye.